Welcome to What is Good, a podcast from the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission, where we explore contemporary cultural issues through a biblical lens. Micah 6:8 says that God has told us what is good, that we're to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with Him. So whether you're seeking a better understanding of how to live that out, or you're just curious to understand a Christian perspective of what's happening in our culture, we hope that you'll find today's conversation helpful as we discuss what is good.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of What is Good. I wanted to say Voltron Lions, we've assembled all 5 lions, but there's only 4 of us, but we've assembled all 4 directors are here today.
Four, man, it's right there for it.
The big 4? What do we call ourselves?
The Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four. The
Four
Wonderful
horsemen.
4. Just to undo the alliteration.
Core 4. There's so many.
Oh yeah, there could be copyright issues with Fantastic Four. Let's go with Wonderful Four.
Well, we don't know how good that movie's going to be yet either. So, anyways.
Fair.
I'm your Director of Ethics and Justice, Dr. David Sanchez. And with me today, we have our Director over all of the things, Dr. Katie Friget.
That's definitely my new title. I like that. That's a much simpler thing to say.
Yeah.
All the things.
Yep. And Director of Hunger and Care, Dr. Irene Gallegos.
Hello.
And our Director of Public Policy and featured host for today, lawyer John Litzler.
Hey, it is so great to have the gang back together. This is going to be fun.
Woohoo. Yay. We're so glad to have you back, John. We've missed you.
Yeah. You've been a little busy, John. What's up with that? You don't call,
It's
you don't
good to
write?
be back.
What are you doing?
And it's John's busyness, which brings us to our recording, because we will be talking about some of the things that went on during this legislative session and some of our wins. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd call them wins.
And bills that we helped with or supported that got passed, or maybe ones that we didn't want to see that didn't get passed as well. And
That's right. We don't have losses. We have wins and we have setbacks, but we don't lose.
yeah,
There you go.
that's right.
All I do is win, guys.
Yep. John is really setting our agenda for today's conversation because he knows the most about what happened during our legislative session. John, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, it's been a really good session. We had a really good session. At the time we're recording this, we're still not sure if we will have any special sessions, and we're still in a really important period, which is the veto period. The governor has 20 days for any bills that got sent to him during the last 10 days of the session, which is most of them. That's when most of the bills come his way. He has 20 days after the end of the session. And so he's got until June 22nd. The session ended on June 2nd. And so we still got in about another week and a half at the time we're recording this. It will have passed by the time you hear this episode. So just understand the caveat today that the governor could veto any of the things that we may talk about. Hopefully not. But also with the understanding that right now it's not looking like there's going to be a special session. There are a couple of issues, bail reform and potentially redistricting. President Donald Trump is really wanting Texas to redistrict before the midterms. So we'll be interested to see if there's any kind of pull for a special session on that. But right now it's looking like we might be done.
Is there someone who officially massages the governor's hands to make sure that they're nice and loose for how many bills are up for him to sign?
David, I love that you asked that question because there are literally, even there's got to be 1,000 bills, even though,
I'm getting a hand cramp just thinking about it.
Most of the nearly 9,000 bills that got filed did not pass, but there's still a lot that did. So he has to have 1,000 bills. But interestingly, I think most people think of the way our federal government works, which is if a president doesn't sign a bill into law, it's called a pocket veto. And
Right.
by not signing the bill, it doesn't go into law, and he's vetoed it. And so then you need 2/3 of Congress to come back and override that veto. Texas doesn't work that way. We don't have a pocket veto. It has to be an active veto. And so if our governor does nothing, if he signs none of those 1,000 bills that sit on his desk, they all become law. So if his hand starts cramping up, he can just stop signing and it's okay. All those bills will still become law.
So, like, the signing ceremonies are just ceremonial then, right? If he wants to sign it, it's just because he's adding, like, his, full-throated support behind the bill, or what?
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, he may sign without a ceremony. He may sit there and have 100 on his desk and just sign them. But the ceremonies are definitely times to respect the advocacy of the people who have worked on the issue. Sometimes the law is named after someone whose life it will affect. Certainly the lawmakers who authored the bill and worked on the bill, the senators and the representatives get to be there. And as you just said, Katie, it's the governor gets to say, almost, yes, I'm a different branch of government, but if I were in the legislature, that I would have supported or voted for this bill. This is one that I'm glad to sign and proud to sign. Yeah, so, we've talked before, but we've got 4 public policy priorities. They are religious liberty, fair and just financial practices, sanctity of life, and human flourishing. And we support bills that promote all 4 of those things. And overall, I think we had a really good session advancing those 4 priorities. Those priorities are set kind of in conjunction with our CLC commissioners. Our commissioners meet with us before the session starts. We talk about kind of what can be expected in those categories, and they helped us set those priorities, which was great. By far, our most successes this session came in the category of promoting fair and just financial practices. Woo-hoo. It was just such a great session on that front. I think the big one that we all think about, because it's so prominent, is the push for casino gambling and sports wagering, online sports wagering in Texas, because there are just hundreds of lobbyists, millions of dollars poured into the state on that. And they had been taking some advances over the last several sessions, kind of getting closer and closer. As a matter of fact, the last session was the first time that they had ever gotten a sports wagering bill, online sports gambling bill, out of the House. And so that, everyone was kind of touting, it's closer than ever before. Now we just have to get to pass the Senate. But man, they lost substantial ground this session. Neither the House nor the Senate had a hearing on a casino or sports gambling bill. And so just that alone was remarkable progress we couldn't have anticipated before the session started. So,
John, I remember you saying at the beginning of the session, but remind us how many lobbyists ended up coming in to push that for this legislative session compared to the past legislative sessions?
It was something like 350 total for the industry. They weren't all with Las Vegas Sands, but it was something like 350 total.
Crazy.
But there were some other financial things going on behind the scenes that are not as prominent. There was a bill, House Bill 4339, that would have increased interest rates on certain consumer loans. They had already, in the interim, had an increase to the amount of fees that they could charge, and then now they wanted to come back and say that they could increase rates by 6% across the board for maximum interest they could charge. We were very concerned about what that would do to consumers. That bill did not pass. And then there's also this product called Earned Wage Access. I don't know if y'all have heard of that. David and Irene in particular, I don't know if I've talked with y'all about that before.
I don't think so.
They are companies that give you money from your paycheck early. So say you only get paid every 2 weeks.
Yes.
And like 1 week in, you want to get paid the money the week you've already earned, and you don't want to have to wait till payday. Their whole thing is like every day should be payday. You shouldn't have to wait for the money you've already earned. And so, they will give you, if you've earned half your paycheck and you want to withdraw it early before you get paid, they will give you half the paycheck. And then what happens is they get your full paycheck on payday. They deduct the half they've already advanced you, minus their fees, of course.
Of course.
And then give you the rest. Well, they operate in a legal gray area. Texas has no law regulating earned wage access. And so they came forward with what seems like a reasonable proposal, which is, we would love for y'all to regulate us. Please give us rules and we will follow them. But the bills that they give the legislature that they're asking them to adopt are no regulation at all. It's basically what they're already doing. They're saying, please regulate us. Please tell us that we're okay to keep doing exactly what we've been doing. No new rules, please.
We want a rule that says whatever we do is right.
That's right.
Sounds like something my 5-year-old would say.
Right. So like say this isn't what's happening, but say they're charging 20% interest. Please pass this law saying that we can provide urged wage access as long as we don't exceed 20% interest. Great, because that's what they're already doing, right? Only that's not what they're willing to offer and do. We talked to try to put caps on the amount of fees they charge because it can be excessive and it can start to look a lot like an end around, kind of like a payday loan does. And because they say it's not a loan, it's just advancing you the money you've already earned. They say that it's not subject to interest caps. And so there is no limit to the fees that they can charge. And so we were concerned about the state of Texas blessing this practice in this industry without putting a fee cap in place. And the fee cap in negotiations was a non-starter. And that made us even more concerned. Because if they wouldn't even agree to a $50 a month cap, a $100 a month cap, a $200 a month cap, if no amount was high enough, then that made us really concerned about how much they're charging in fees.
Such a sneaky thing. Like, I just think of, I've seen the commercials, and for someone who maybe does not manage their money in the best way, who thinks, oh, I'm just going to get it sooner because I have this bill coming up or like to pay. And I just think of the ways that it's worded, how predatory. I mean, it just really is. It is so sneaky to just say, the way that they didn't want to consider it as a loan because it's your, quote unquote hard-earned money, but they are still taking advantage. And it's absurd to me. And to even say, I know we joked about it, but yes, it's disgusting that they didn't want to admit that, okay, yeah, we're up for it. But no, not really. We're just saying that we're okay. You can please tell us what to do or how to have some kind of limitations. It's just so sneaky all around and truly disgusting to me personally on how predatory it is.
I just wonder, like, if it's money they've already earned, why should there be any interest on it at all?
Well, that's their argument, is that it's not interest. It's just a fee for advancing you the money before your employer gives it to you. Right?
Okay.
Your employer is stuck to this antiquated pay scale of every 2 weeks. And so, that's an issue with your employer, but we can give you the money that you've already earned now because we know you've already earned it. But it is, I think, very damaging for people who suffer from addiction, whatever that addiction may be. Yeah. Because you're not just living paycheck to paycheck, you're living. There's one lady who was a home health nurse in College Station. I read she was deducting twice a day. She was withdrawing what she had earned at lunch from her first 4 hours of her shift, and then she was withdrawing at the end of the day what she had earned the rest of the day for the last 4 hours of her shift. So you can see a connection to gambling, for example. I know we don't have casinos in Texas now, but what if you gambled away all of your paycheck that you had earned, but then you could go to work for a couple more hours and withdraw that money immediately right away and go back to the casino at the end of the day and gamble that away. And again, even with small fees, if there's no cap on it, but there's a fee each time you withdraw, think of like an ATM fee, right? Maybe you need money from an ATM that's not your bank's ATM on a vacation, and you pay $4 or whatever it is to get your money, but you got your money for the week. Now imagine if you were doing that $4 every single time you needed to buy something. $4 for a $10 hamburger and $4 for sunscreen that you needed to buy or lip balm or whatever. It would add up if there was this fee on top every single time. And so that's how it can kind of snowball. It was interesting. They knew that there were religious groups that were concerned with the bill. We testified on the bill, and we were asking for some better guardrails than the way that it came. One of the things we were asking for was that they would set the tip default to $0, because what happens with a lot of these apps is that they ask you to tip on top of the fees and say things like a portion of your tip will go to feed hungry kids in another country, or if you don't tip, the service may go away.
Why don't they plug the hunger offering instead?
Right?
Please don't associate with that. So just clear, this is a tip on just letting you, quote unquote, borrow earned money.
There's no service. It's an app. It's not like somebody made you a latte or something or whatever, or waited on your table. and they set it, the default, at several dollars, I think one testimony was maybe one of them set it at $7 a default tip. So we asked that the bill would make it where the default tip was 0, because you know how suggestive those tips can be. You've gone to a restaurant and it says here's 15,
peer pressure
20,
every time.
25%, and then you have to hit other if you want to do something different, and the waiter is standing there while you're doing it. Anyway, so we're testifying. We're saying we'd like you to do this to make it better. Boy, we would love a kind of a cap, an all-in monthly cap on fees that are charged. And one of the representatives from FinTech, that's what they call them, is financial technology. There's a company FinTech, but just in general, these are called FinTech products, financial technology products. Earned wage access is a type of FinTech product. So not that organization, but one of the earned wage access providers said something like, and for the religious groups that are testifying here today, the Bible says in the Old Testament to pay your workers daily. Now, unfortunately, I had already finished my testimony, so I wasn't able to go back up to the microphone and remind them, but at no interest. Just pay them daily with no interest. But
we know our Bible too.
Well, it's just, I think of, okay, this is financial health and financial literacy, but I think even aside from people with addictions, just general people who just do not have the best general financial health practices. So let's say someone who maybe is diabetic, and you have different levels of prevention, and so you can say here's this medication to regulate, and that's for someone who just wants to take the medication and does not care to alter their nutrition. There are ways though that you can intervene and say, hey, this level of physical activity, this level of nutrition, these things are things you can tweak to prevent, to possibly not have to take the medication. Now obviously every situation, everybody's different, responds differently. The point is though, there are earlier points of intervention. And so I just think this is such a ludicrous system, because it's saying, well, because you don't know how to, and I'm just saying if someone may not know how to even advocate, can you call your mortgage or your renter to change the day of when your bill gets taken out of your account? Do you know how to negotiate other strategies, other forms of necessary fixed expenses? Because these practices may not be in place, you may not have the habits of these, good financial health habits, then we're going to offer this ludicrous system to you. It's so mind-boggling and frustrating. I'm so thankful that we paid, attention to this bill and followed it and tried to, and worked on ways to attempt to negotiate those caps, but ultimately just, again, fighting for those just financial practices.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say on this is that it wasn't all defense. So it feels like it's all defense when you're trying to, prevent expansion of gambling, or trying to prevent bills that would increase, interest rates or fees that get charged to consumers. But there were some areas that we were able to get kind of proactively support. One that we haven't really talked about because it's been truly under the radar was a bill passed that requires financial literacy courses in high schools. And so going to Irene's point about like people not knowing a lot of this stuff, if we could just equip and educate people on the front end while they're in school, they'll understand more about how these products worked and how interest works, and, make more informed decisions. And so that was a great one. So if you're in high school, you're welcome. You have a new financial literacy course coming. I'm sure you're going to love it.
Yay.
Don't worry.
Add it to the STAR test.
There's so many times where I have said, I wish I learned this in school. Revolving financial literacy. And one of the podcasts I listened to, there's a guy in his late 20s who's a millionaire, and wasn't because he got handed this money. He said he grew up in Nashville, I believe it's Nashville, if not somewhere in Tennessee. And it's actually where Dave Ramsey's business, I think, is from. Anyways, and so Ramsey realized at some point that where his business was actually the number of bankruptcies reported in that area was skyrocketing. And so he began to implement his courses and the baby steps programs into the local high schools. And this guy took that course in high school and began implementing these strategies early on as he was in high school and then in college. And so now at 20, I think he became a millionaire at 20, 27, 28. He's 29 now. But it's just mind-boggling. These, just the little things that we can learn, it can go a long way. And now he's on this podcast with this 50-year-old, so someone who is more seasoned in investments. And it's so neat to hear their perspectives and how they encourage so many other people. And so to me, that the financial literacy in high schools is really exciting, and the potential it can bring for communities.
Yeah, so that was a really great bill. I was excited about it too, Irene. And then, of course, the big one where we were on the offensive was against the Texas lottery.
Yeah. Fireworks.
And so the Texas Lottery Commission is going to be abolished. I say is going to be confidently, as though the governor will not veto Senate Bill 3070. I don't believe that he will. And lottery services are going to be moved to Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, which is just going to clean up so many things. Y'all, I was just listening to a call with Rob Kohler, who's our consultant on gambling issues. He was on with the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, and a question came up to Dan Patrick about expanding to casino and sports betting stuff in Texas. And he said, well, do you know the bill in 2023 where it was going to place that? What agency was going to be in charge of casino gambling, regulating casino gambling and sports betting in Texas? And he said, I bet Rob knows. Rob, what was it? And Rob Kohler said, it was going to be the Texas Lottery Commission. Well, there is no Texas Lottery Commission anymore because they did such a poor job with the game that they were overseeing.
Yeah, they did.
That why on the world would you give extra responsibility to them? And that's a big part of why there were no hearings on those bills this session. So that was good. On the flip side, I will say the area where I think we're going to have the hardest struggle, not just this session we had a struggle, but in future sessions, is religious liberty. And there is an education component, I think, that needs to come from RCLC to Texas Baptists and to legislators about kind of reminders about what it means to have religious liberty for all. There were some bills that we really that we supported that were really good bills that got derailed because some of the sentiment was, well, is this for everybody? Are atheists going to be able to do this? Are Muslims going to be able to do this? And the answer is yes. It's not just for the majority group or for the Christian group or the Baptist group. And so one of them was Senate Bill 854, which we were really excited about early in the session. It had a lot of momentum about churches being able to build affordable housing on their property. And I talked to a lot of our pastors who were doing that already. And some of the zoning and red tape and stuff that they were going through, there's this concept called NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I don't know if y'all have heard of that. But the idea of that's a great thing you're trying to do. I don't want it in my neighborhood where it could affect my property values. And so, this bill was dubbed YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard.
I love that so much.
Yeah. It started to have a lot of really good progress, and it had some strong conservative lawmakers who were pushing for it in both the House and the Senate. And then truth be told, I'll share my perspective. There may have been other issues or complications that I'm not aware of, but from my perspective, all the headlines about the East Plano Islamic Center, EPIC, started coming out. And the question was, wait, are Muslims going to be able to build affordable housing on their property too? Or is this just for Christian churches? It's for everybody. It's for all churches. And I really think that derailed the bill. There was another bill that would have created a religious freedom commission, which didn't even actually have any lawmaking authority or regulatory authority. It was just going to create commissioners who advise the legislature, here are religious issues we see. And that bill also did not pass. And we supported that bill. And we were hoping that the commission would be diverse religious viewpoints across Texas that represented the makeup of Texas. Unfortunately, that didn't pass either. And then the biggest one we've talked about before was the passage of school education savings account, also sometimes referred to as school vouchers. And there are a lot of concerns with how that might affect public education, but our major concern at the CLC has always been religious liberty concerns and what happens when you compel someone with their tax dollars to pay for religious teaching or instruction that they don't agree with. I won't call myself a historian because I'm not, but I'm kind of an amateur interest in religious liberty and Baptist history.
You're pretty good. I've heard you talk about it, John. You can claim it.
You can go find there are cases where Baptists were arrested in early America rather than pay taxes because they didn't want their taxes to go to pay the Congregationalist minister's salary.
Right.
And there's even a sweet case of a woman who refused to pay her property tax because her property tax went to pay for a church that wasn't Baptist, that she didn't agree with, a denomination that wasn't Baptist she didn't agree with. She got arrested for not paying her taxes. And it's just interesting because in some respects we've come full circle in that now our property taxes will be used to pay for a religious school that may teach things that we don't agree with, whether that be for Baptist, whether that be, a Catholic school or a Jewish school or an Islamic school. And similarly, those folks will then be paying taxes for private Christian schools to teach things about Jesus that they may or may not agree with as well. So, all right, but I have a question for you all. I'm going to put you on the spot kind of. Y'all were at the executive board when I gave an update. You have all received a copy of, the bills and things that we've worked on. I'm just curious if you have a bill that you were particularly excited about, like something we did this session that you were like, yes, that is kind of my thing, or I'm glad we engaged on that, or maybe it wasn't one we engaged on. Maybe it didn't fit one of our 4 priorities, but you found out about it and you were just glad that Texas was taking action on something maybe that's near and dear to you.
The one that came to mind for me, and I had to look it up to get the bill number because I just know it as the Cuddle Cots one. And this is part of the one that you gave the update to our commissioners at Executive Board, but House Bill 37. That to me, so putting in the perinatal palliative grant program for hospitals that don't have the technology to be able to have these Cuddle Cots. So, and that one is very personal to me. And I even text Katie when you were giving your update. So dear friends of ours who lost their firstborn son at, I think, around 23 weeks. And so he was born, he lived for about 11 minutes and born very early, very premature. And so they were able to spend more time with him. And so that was COVID regulations were still in place, even though this was October of 2021. And so really it was only the parents and grandparents who were in the room. But I think there was a willingness of the staff. And so I was able to be there with our friends. And I even got the opportunity, the time to just cuddle and have time to spend with who I consider, quote unquote, my nephew. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity based on the timing of when he passed if it had not been for this Cuddle Cot. And I remember that was the first time I ever saw a Cuddle Cot. So this bed with a cooling pad essentially to be able to hold. And this baby, he was the size of probably a water bottle. And so for me, it was a very tender and special moment. Certainly one that I will keep treasuring. And so that was very much possible because of the opportunity to have a Cuddle Cot at bedside. And there are hospitals that cannot afford to be able to implement this program. And that is just such a tender time for not only the parents of the child, but the family. And so to be able to have this time to grieve, and it's so important. And so that for me was just one of the beautiful ones that I thought, way to go. Thank you. I can't remember the group who reached out, but so glad that they did.
It was the bill author. It was Representative Police's office. And I love that you brought this up, Irene, because to me, it is a perfect example of politics gone right. Like what can be right about politics. So the representative was out block walking in her neighborhood, trying to get votes, knocking on doors, meeting constituents, asking for their vote. And she knocked on a door, and this mom shared a story which is very similar to the awesome, personal story you just shared with us, Irene, and said, every hospital needs this. They got to have this. And the representative took it to heart and was like, yeah, I agree. And so, she goes out saying, I want to represent you. I want your vote. And she hears from her constituents and listens to what they're saying they need. And it becomes law. Amazing. It becomes a bill that becomes law. And the testimony was so powerful, as Irene just shared with us, the personal testimonies that people had. about what this bill did, how it gave the gift of time to families. And one of the things a couple things about it that I really liked. One, we got to partner with our chaplaincy department on it. And I love when our CLC gets to partner with other areas, not just within our center, like chaplaincy, but even other centers. And we endorse chaplains to hospitals, and they're on the front lines ministering to families who lose their children. And so to be able to talk to our chaplains, and here's testimony similar to what Irene shared about how this would help, was so powerful. We joint authored a letter with our chaplaincy department. So that was one aspect that was really neat. And then the other one was, this bill was not on my radar. I had never heard of Cuddle Cots before the session started. And so it just goes to show you how you can go into a session thinking you're going to be focusing on one thing and trying to do one thing. And then you'll learn about stuff that you go, we got to spend time and effort and energy on that. This is an important thing for us to do, and it's well worth our time.
Yes.
I totally agree. Irene, you stole mine. I was going to give the same one, but for all the reasons, it's probably the mom heart in both of us.
It's not even what is good time yet.
go.
We're already stealing each other's.
But I will
answers.
also just take this opportunity to just, John, thank you for your presence in the Capitol. I'm not going to go into the details of how the sausage gets made, but this is one particular bill that the CLC was instrumental in getting across the finish line. And I was just so thankful because it wouldn't have happened if John the Baptist hadn't have been in the building. And it just was so exciting to get to watch that and see the efforts there. And then John and I had the opportunity to get to sit with the mother as she was watching the second reading of it. And just even the experience of her thinking that she was sitting there in the house gallery alone to realize that we were right there beside her. I felt like that was a real God-ordained moment for her to just feel that other people were there and cared about it, and to be able to share with her what we did and that. And so just like John said, it was like all the things gone right. Like it just being able to have the person share her story, to have a representative hear it and be like, I'm going to do something about this. And then reaching out to other advocates saying, will you help me? And we said, yes, we would love to help you with this. And then seeing the back and forth and the up and downs of the bill. And there was one time we thought it was dead, and then it was resurrected. And then seeing it finally get across the finish line, it was just such a complete picture. It was a fun experience. That's what Christian advocacy looks like. So it was just really fun to get to watch that bill come to fruition for so many different reasons.
And if I could even full circle some more, after it got passed, I reached out to our dear friends and let them know. And for them, it was almost this awareness piece of, they didn't know about Cuddle Cots prior to their experience, but it was also an awareness piece of the advocacy work because they weren't aware that there are hospitals that can't afford it. And so because they happened to be at a hospital that had it, it didn't even cross their mind that
others wouldn't have it.
Yes. Yeah. And so they know other parents who have experienced this loss now because they're now part of this group, and unfortunately. And so it was a good awareness and advocacy piece for them to now understand that not everyone is privileged to have what they were offered.
Yeah. And that's a great point, too, Irene. One of the things I really liked about the bill was the final version prioritized hospitals, and it prioritized hospitals that don't have them already, or maybe a hospital that only has one, but they have a high level of maternal births, and so maybe they needed more than one. Maybe they need a second one. So it looked at high levels of maternal births, hospitals that don't already have them. The prioritization is going to be really helpful in making sure they get to the places that they're needed. So.
Yeah.
David, how about you? Did you have a bill kind of on that list of we took them, Josue Cedillo, shout out to Josue, our awesome intern.
Shout out, Josue.
Actually created a great chart with, all four of our priorities and where each bill landed in there. Did you have a favorite one maybe on that list, or maybe not on that list?
Maybe, but there's one I'd like to hear more about from you. I don't think it was one that was covered in your explanation to our exec board, and that's in the Fair and Just Financial Practices, a bill that said it was passed and sent to the governor, Senate Bill 1238, widows insurance. So prohibited insurance discrimination based on marital status after death. I'm really interested in hearing more about what that was about, because I believe the Bible, Old and New Testament,
has some things to say
about real religion or a real relationship with God manifests itself in care for orphans and widows. So could you share more about that? And then depending on what you say, I'll say that one's my favorite or I won't.
Yeah, well, It's a bill we supported, but it's not a bill we did a lot of work on. In general, insurance was a big issue this session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone's struggling with insurance. It's gone up for your homes. It's gone up for churches. Some church providers have pulled out. We were trying to expand options for insurance for churches this session. Schools, it's gone up for. And there are a couple of practices that, I wouldn't call it an overhaul of the way insurance is done. It was more like kind of nibbling at the edges of how can we fix some things. And that we supported that I wouldn't say we put a ton of legwork into, but we supported and we appreciated them. One was just telling you why you've been denied for coverage. You have to provide a reason. Even if it's a pretextual reason, you have to say something. And we supported that. A lot of our churches were getting denied and no one was saying why. We've never had a claim before. Our building's in good shape. We don't understand why we can't get coverage. Even if the answer is you're not anywhere near tornadoes or hurricanes or fires, but there's too many of those things happening in other parts of the state and we just aren't giving coverage. So that was one of them. And then this other one was insurance companies essentially saying, well, widows are more of a risk and therefore we can deny their insurance or increase their insurance based on their status being widowed. And it was, in our consideration, a discrimination based on marital status, right?
Yeah.
That you would receive coverage if you were a single person that had never been married versus if you had been widowed. And so, again, it's not something we did a lot of legwork on, so I don't have a lot of details on it, but we were glad to see that bill pass and prohibit practices that would increase insurance for widows in Texas.
Now, I'm just curious, was it specifically widows or was it men as well, like anyone who'd been in...
It was anyone who had lost a partner or a spouse.
Okay.
But, insurance is interesting because I toss around terms like discriminating based on status or whatever. Insurance is one of those few areas where you get to because your risk can be associated with what's normally a protected characteristic about you, right?
Yeah. Male, female, age.
The irony.
Yes, normally you can't discriminate against a male or female.
Things.
All sorts of things. And so they'll discriminate against you all the time because those characteristics, which are normally a protected part of your identity, if I'm going to buy a hamburger, you can't discriminate against me and charge me more because I'm a man. If I'm going to get car insurance, you absolutely can because data and statistics show that I'm more likely to be in an accident or an accident that has higher damage and higher cost. So it is interesting, but what Texas did was say, this is one area where you can't increase premiums because of this person's characteristic or status about themselves. There are still other areas where you can. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be able to in all circumstances, but it really is, to David's point, it protected people who had lost loved ones. And, you're already going through the death of a loved one, depending on their age, could be loss of income or benefits. And then you get hit with the double whammy of increased insurance or non-renewed insurance because you don't have a spouse on it with you anymore either. So.
John, I'm curious, did you have a favorite bill that you worked on this session? I know you touched on, hundreds, if not thousands, but I was curious about that.
I do yes, I do. And that's a great segue. That is an unintentional segue. So last session, I don't think I understood just how important the budget was to a lot of things that we wanted to do. I was all focused on getting these bills passed and can we pass this bill or that bill? And Marshall kept going to all, another one of our consultants with the CLC kept going to all of these budget hearings and talking about the budget. And I'm like, I want a bill passed that says this. And he's like, if there's no money for it in the budget, it's just words on paper. It doesn't matter what it says. And so, yes, House Bill 500 is the supplemental appropriations bill that supplements our main budget, our main appropriations bill.
Okay.
And I was so pleased with a lot of the victories that we got in there. And I'll talk about them in a second. But just in general, I'm curious. I don't have a lot of experience with budgets, or didn't before this session. Y'all have more experience. I know some of you have helped your churches with budgets. Katie oversees our CLC budget. Irene has to oversee the hunger offering budget and those disbursements and stuff. I've always heard budgets are moral documents. I think there's sayings out there that show me what you budget and I'll show you what you care about. Texas has we just adopted a $338 billion budget. Now that's for 2 years. It's for a biennium. Because they
Billion
only
with
meet
a
every
B.
2 years. Billion with a B. 338 billion. It's a 5% increase over the last one, which was for 24-25. This budget's for 26-27. So it has gone up. And so it's a big budget. I won't pretend to be a financial guru and understand all of it, but I'm just curious, with those thoughts in mind, you've overseen budgets, kind of the concept that budgets are moral documents, why it's important, y'all think, in your minds, that Texas's budget highlight and emphasize the appropriate things.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I tend to oversee kind of just at a practical level. I pay the bills for our family just because that's more of my wheelhouse than my husband's. But it really kind of was a new exercise, kind of went to the next level when I started working as a center director. And so not only do I wear the hat of working for the Christian Life Commission, I also oversee the Center for Cultural Engagement. And so we have 5 unique ministries that have 5 unique budgets all within it. And then we also have the budget for the Texas Baptist Hunger Offering. There's just so many different places that really started to demonstrate to me the value systems of where you put the money, that you can clearly see that funding directly equals value seen, value added, and on the alternative, like when you're taking funds away, it is directly connected to the ministry feeling like I'm not valued or I'm not being given the resources or tools, and so I'm not going to be able to thrive with the ministry assignment that you've given me if you're not resourcing me to be able to do it. To your point, John, if I'm not being funded, it's words on a page. You can tell me to go do these things, but if you're not funding me or equipping me to be able to do the thing, I don't know how I'm going to be effective in this. I just feel like I'm just kind of going through the motions at that point. And I've seen that, even in my wheelhouse, kind of 5 times over in different ministry assignments, seeing where ministries that are appropriately funded or resourced are able to thrive. Ministries that don't have the bandwidth or the funding that they feel like they need, they're going to atrophy. And that's just the natural consequence of not having the resources that they feel like they need to be effective.
I love what you said. And for me, there's also a coding aspect. So I love numbers. My dad's an accountant and I grew up with numbers. I, similar to Katie, run, the finances and manage the finances for our household. I oversee the finances for our small family business, volunteer treasurer at the church. And so, and then of course the hunger offering and community care grants through the CLC. And so I see numbers quite often. And I typically say sometimes I'll say I'm more of a numbers person. I'm not that creative. But truthfully, there's also creativity when it comes to budgets and numbers because,
yes.
And I'll give you a concrete example that I like to share with people when they're doing their personal budget is there was a time where I was reviewing our expenses, our household expenses, and thought, man, do we really eat out that much? Mm-hmm. And we do at times. However, what I started realizing when I started thinking about those experiences were it wasn't necessarily all of my household eating. It was times where we took a meal, part of a meal train. And so there are moments where we purchased the meal or paid for the meal for the entire table as a way of let's have fellowship or let's we know that this family could use the help right now, the financial assistance. And so what I started doing is if we have those instances, sometimes when I code our budget in my household and our expenses, I'll put that in our tithes and offerings bucket as opposed to our eating out bucket. And so because for me, that's a way of giving to others and it's a gift to others. And so for us, why do we do that? Why do we have that generosity? Well, it's a way of giving and it's part of our offering to the Lord outside of our tithe. And that's the way our household operates. And so when I think of budgets, and so I think even when it comes to our state, I think there's certainly you want to distribute fairly. That doesn't always mean equally. And I think that there can also be some creativity involved in how are these coded and what is this necessarily going to cover? And I think some things will bleed over, but I'm so appreciative. I can appreciate, I know an increased budget, there's questions on what all that will impact and where are we going to get those funds from. I'm so appreciative of where these funds can go to. And I'm excited about some of those opportunities.
Yeah, I will say Texas has had a surplus the last 2 sessions, which is really good and fortunate. You know, it's harder to do a budget when you're at a deficit, but our lawmakers have been really responsible with our surplus as well. They don't always spend exactly where we would want them to spend, but they're, you know, as you would expect with a financially conservative legislature, they're being smart and careful about, you know, I think a 5% increase, although that's substantial for a state our size, is reasonable and modest, you know, with our surpluses and sets us up well for the next couple of years. So. But the reason I brought up the budget, I specifically want to focus on House Bill 500, which is the supplemental appropriations bill. And, you know, last session, and again this session too, we spent a lot of time focusing on trying to pass a bill that would require air conditioning in Texas prisons. No cooler than 65 degrees, no hotter than 85 degrees. And we did a whole podcast episode on this topic. And I think it's a good bill, and I still want the bill to pass. And I did spend time again trying to get that bill to pass. I spent a lot of time walking up and down those steps, going into offices, trying to get that bill to pass. And no bill like that passed. But there was a bill that would have required AC in all Texas prisons by the year 2032, which is 7 years from now, which means... we just finished the 25 session. It means there'd be the 2027 session, the 2029 session, and the 2031 session. So 3 more sessions to get it done before that bill took effect and went into law. And again, a valuable lesson I learned is, yes, it would have been really great to pass that bill, and I still think we should have passed it. It got out of the House. It didn't get out of the Senate. I'm sad it didn't have enough time. But with what money? You can pass a bill that says state has to do it, and then where does the money come from?
Yeah.
And so a lot of our work was on House Bill 500, which included $600 million, new dollars for facilities, TDCJ facilities that are going to have air conditioning in them somehow. Now, it's not all going to be directly retrofitting old prisons with AC, but there's $226.3 million in there for major repair and restoration projects, which can include some other projects like roofing and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's code for putting AC in old prisons.
That's so good.
Yes.
And if they would just do that every time, if they'll do that again in 2027 and 2029 and 2031, you know, you get close to $1 billion there, which is the number TDCJ has said they needed. Now, they need that number today. Cost of labor and materials and inflation and stuff, that number could go up. But in addition to that, they authorized in that bill $110 million for the purchase of a correctional facility out in Garza County. I think that's West Texas, for $110 million, called the Dalby Correctional Facility. And it's owned by the county, by Garza County, but they don't put any inmates in there. So it's sitting there empty. And it has air conditioning already in it. And so Texas is going to buy it and start putting inmates, buy it from the county, which is a win-win because the county's got an empty building, so that'll be money for the county. And then Texas can start putting inmates there, and they're all AC cool. They call them cool beds. They're all cool beds in that facility. And then in addition to buying that facility and the $226 million they're going to use for major repairs to put in AC, they've also set aside some money to build new facilities. And of course, the new facilities will also have AC in them as well. And so between those 3 things, it's about $600 million total. And again, if they would just, there's no guarantees. We're going to have to keep working on this. We're going to have to bring it up every single session until it's done. But if we as a state will put $600 million more towards it in 2027 and $600 million more towards it in 2029 and $600 million more towards it in 2031, I believe we can get every prison in Texas with air conditioning by 2032, just like that bill would have required.
That's so awesome.
Now, that's a long way away. That's 7 years, and that's a long time for people who are currently incarcerated with no heat or air. But that's what the bill was going to do, and we can accomplish that through other means.
Yeah.
John, do you think that it's a more strategic approach in some ways just because lawmakers see that $1 billion price tag and that just feels like a much harder pill to swallow than $600 million?
I think so. I think it helps to do it in chunks. The issue is, and our concern there has always been, we may not always have a surplus. Now is the time, you know.
Sure.
And by delaying it, the cost only goes up. It's not getting cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
It's it's $1 billion today. By 2030, it could be 1.1 billion or 1.2 billion, or But yes, I do think that by doing it in chunks, we're going to get there. I believe we're going to get there. And I still would want the bill to pass. I want to send the message never again, right? This was a dark period in Texas history where we had all these 2/3 of facilities that didn't have AC. And we're not ever going to do that again. And we're going to pass a law that says it's illegal to do that again. So that was one aspect of House Bill 500. And then another aspect was Summer EBT, Electronic Benefits Transfer, which is it's like a SNAP program. It's basically food stamps or benefits for kids in low-income families so that during the summer when they're not in school and they don't get their free or reduced lunch, they can go get nutritional food from a grocery store or a provider in their town. And the federal government has these funds, and Texas has not been tapping into them. And we were going to get $450 million per year. So that's $900 million for the biennium, almost $1 billion for the biennium. There is a cost. Texas has to cover half of the cost of running the program, administration for the program. And so what we had to do was say, we're going to authorize and we're going to set aside these funds to administer this program. It's a federal program, and then we'll tap into these $450 million, almost $1 billion of federal money. House Bill 500 set aside appropriations for the administration of the program. We're going to have summer EBT for 26 and 27 for those two years. And that was exciting. And that was another area where I called food banks and I reached out to Irene, talk about collaboration. I reached out to Irene and said, Irene, show me your map of where all of our Texas Baptist Hunger Offering recipients are. Here's the district of the representative or the senator I'm talking to. I need people in that district. What recipients do we have in that part of Texas? And she was able to say, oh, this person and this person, this ministry receives funds.
That's so cool.
And that's their senator. So they should probably call their senator and say, we want
it's one of my favorite calls from John.
That's so fun.
And it happened. It's in there. It made it in.
It made it.
Awesome.
Great.
And what I love about this too is I think for some it's still, I feel at least, it's still not a reality that there are children in the summer who go without food here in Texas.
Yes.
And that it's happening. Feeding America just about a little over a month ago came out with the latest data and said that the DFW Metroplex now ranks third in metropolitan areas with high food insecurity, right after New York City and LA.
Oh my goodness.
That is the starking reality of our communities, the ones that we live in. Yeah. There are still children that go without food, especially during the summer months where they're not in school, so they don't have easier access. And so this is it's huge. It really is.
So another bill that was fun that's not related to any of our work, but I'm going to connect it in just a second, I promise, there was a bill for tax credits or incentives for Hollywood to come film here. And one of the reasons it was fun is because all these A-list celebrities start showing up at the Capitol to testify. And it's like, oh, McConaughey's in the building, and Woody Harrelson's in the building. Dennis Quaid came and testified,
Oh, I missed him.
The folks who run The Chosen came to testify because, they film I think it's like the Midlothian area or somewhere near Fort Worth, near y'all. And they came and talked about a project that they're doing, which sounded really cool. But that they might end up shooting in New Mexico or someplace because it's just expensive here. So they talked about tax breaks for filming projects. And one of the justifications for it, and here's how I'm going to connect it. One of the justifications for it was it's going to bring business here and industry, and people come and they fill the hotels and they stay here, and it returns $2 for every $1 we give in a tax break. It's $2 more into the Texas economy. And so one of the things I love about the summer EBT program is it really isn't costing Texas very much at all. It's funds that are out there from the federal government that we're unlocking and tapping into. And it's putting $450 million in the Texas economy. So it helps kids who need this food. And at the same time, they're going to their local grocer and buying food there. And so it's it's not just here's a check for $450 million, go get yourself a water ski. It's going, right into it helps our grocers. It helps our farmers. It helps Texas food economy. And so that's exciting to know that, we're going to have $1 billion of our tax money. I mean, it's our money that we pay in taxes to the federal government, come back to Texas and support Texas economy and feed hungry Texas kids. It's just an exciting thing.
So exciting. And maybe we can see some more A-list celebrities just hanging out in our downtowns.
Maybe so.
Maybe some bonus.
Yeah, maybe so. Jennifer Garner was there last session. I saw James Vanderbeek there one time. I don't know why celebrities come hang out at the Texas Capitol, but it's interesting to see them when they're there. Yeah, so that's really all I wanted to, emphasize or highlight, coming out of the session, unless there was anything else maybe you guys thought we really ought to mention or not let go before we start talking about what is good.
No, I just want to reiterate how exciting it is just to be able to stand in this ministry gap. It's unique. I'm just thankful that Texas Baptists see the value in it and have commissioned us, and that this can be part of the ministry assignment that we have just as a service to our pastors and churches. One of the things that I was really encouraged about this session and really was convicted to be more intentional going forward at the, for the upcoming legislative sessions is just the involvement of our pastors in the work of advocacy, that ultimately this is a resource and work that we do in service of our churches, that really we want to exist to serve our churches and our pastors and the work that they're doing, which is really incredible. And that's really, the heartbeat of the kingdom of heaven is at the local church level, right? And so I was thankful to be able to partner with so many different pastors this legislative session, having them come to the Capitol, having them reach out, and just hearing the work that they're doing and how we can complement and support that. So thankful for one pastor who reached out. There was a bill that he was very concerned about. It was going to directly impact the ministry and the work of the church that they were doing. And to be able to just tell him, hey, Pastor, we are very aware of this. Here's what your CLC team has already been doing. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. And his response being something to the effect of, this is why we are Texas Baptist. This is why we are not non-denominational, because this belief of just we are more together. We're thankful that we can link arms with so many different pastors to be able to see this kingdom-minded impact advocacy work that we do. So just as I'm concluding and ruminating about what we did at the Capitol and the work that the CLC was able to do, just bringing it back to the pastors and the local Texas Baptist churches that we serve, just thankful for them and that we are able to do this on their behalf.
It's good.
It is wonderful to be able to partner with our churches in this work. And it's something that grew this session. We were able to do more of that, of exactly what Katie just described. And I would love for it to grow even more next session. Like Irene said, it's wonderful to be able to tell somebody, who's gone through something, oh, we advocated for that bill. Oh, we are supporting that. We would love for you to come support that. I'll teach you how to register. You can come testify, or you can write a letter. I talked about how we joint authored a letter with our chaplaincy folks. And so maybe you're listening to this and you're part of a parachurch nonprofit or your church's ministry in an area and you're passionate about something or you care about something. We would love the opportunity to partner with you to be able to say, kind of like I talked about with Irene earlier or on the summer EBT program, let's find what district you're in and who your representatives are and some of the stuff they may be championing or that they may care about, or maybe you care about, and we need to get it on their radar. They need to know their constituents care about this. We would love to help make those connections. All right. Well, that is stuff that is good, because policy, we love supporting good policy. I think that is what is good. But we also like to talk about things that are good that are not policy related. And so as our customary sign off, as we wrap up our episode, I'm curious to know, you guys, what is something good that's going on in the world or in your lives right now?
I'll go. So I've mentioned on a previous episode that I started a garden, and with all this rain that has come in, that some detriment to it as well. But a good thing out of all this weather and this rain is my garden is just flourishing. It looks so beautiful, and my tomatillo plants are nearly my height, which is not too tall, but they are tall now. And today I get to, yesterday we harvested some of our yellow squash, and so today I get to deliver that to some of our neighbors, and so I'm so thankful for that, and it's really awesome to get to this point too with the garden.
Irene, if you ever feel compelled to share tomatillo sauce, I volunteer as tribute. So,
I can share tomatillos. Now the sauce, I'm going to have to learn how to make it for the first time.
I love tomatillo sauce. So
I love that. We don't have a garden, but we love sharing our eggs. Just sharing with neighbors, sharing with friends. It's just really fun. I love that your garden is succeeding enough that you get to do that, Irene. I think that's great.
Well, we just wrapped up in kind of real time the Southern Baptist Convention, and I've been over there the last 4 days, every day, just being able to connect and talk with people. And that's kind of my what is good, is just being able to connect with friends. I'm old enough now to be able to have friendships that are 20 plus years old, and I'm so thankful for that. So I walked into an event for my alma mater on Tuesday night. And normally these are at these events, I see people that are pretty much the same people every time, like the same alums, all from Texas, kind of regather and get to see them. And that's fun. But this particular time, I walked in and saw a sorority sister of mine who was a very dear friend who I've known for over 20 years now. And she was there with her family. They had come into Dallas for the SBC. And it was just wild. My brain just had some cognitive dissonance to be able to see this good friend who I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. Took a picture, sent it to my old roommates because we were all friends and kind of our dorms were right next to each other. And it was just a sweet time to be able to get to reconnect and see some friends and fellowship with people that it's been a hot minute since I've seen, but just to be able to see where she's at and just what the Lord's done in her life. So just old friendships is my what is good.
For me, summer schedule is always a lot of fun. I get to be a part of different youth camps. I'll be down in Waco. I'll be up in the Panhandle a couple times. I'll be over on DBU's campus. And just getting to do workshops and then interact with youth. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. And I'm really excited for the summer.
It's great. I always love hearing about all the places David has gone during the summer and all the different places he gets invited to speak. I'm excited about summer, I guess just for personal reasons, family reasons. Like my daughter is out of school and the session is done. And so her schedule freeing up and my schedule freeing up now link and coincide.
Yay.
And so I'm just looking forward to spending time with my daughter this summer. I think that's going to be what is good. She's doing swim. The swim meets on Saturday are fun. And just getting to spend more time with her. I've got a newfound appreciation for our lawmakers and the time that they spend here in Austin because they miss bedtime every night. I don't miss bedtime every night, but I missed it a lot of nights while I was up at the Capitol, but at least I still get to come home to my bed. And I'm excited about not missing bedtimes this summer. That's what's good.
I love it.
Do I close this out since I introed us? Is that how that
Sure.
Is that how that works?
I was like, who closes?
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of What is Good. If you have other questions, John, if people had other questions about the legislative session, is it okay for you to share? Is it okay for us to burden you with that?
Absolutely. So Katie and I are about to release a letter that's kind of our summary of how we think the session went. And then we will have, after the veto period passes,
right,
we will have a more detailed rundown of bills and how they turned out on our website under our public policy session on our Texas CLC website.
Yeah, texasclc.org. So you can go there and look, and then you can also find contact information for John and the rest of us for questions about that, questions about the hunger offering, how to give or how to receive from the hunger offering, and of course questions if you want us to come and speak at your churches, which we love to do. So thanks everyone for listening, and you'll hear us next time.
Bye.
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 John, you also had questions for me about the Superman trailer?
Yes. Did you see the newest one? The one dropped yesterday.
Yes, I did. I usually don't watch trailers that are closer to the release of a movie, but since you wanted my opinion on it, I watched it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you go watch it. I'm just curious. You know, there's been mixed reaction. Mm-hmm. Some people have gotten so used to the Snyder version of Superman that they're like, this is going to be awful. And then other people are like, yes, this is what Superman is supposed to be. So I'm curious if you're excited about it. I am excited about it, but we're going to be in Australia when it comes out, so I don't get to go on like opening night or anything. I'll have to wait till I
Oh
get
wait,
back.
we'll be in the future. So will it already be
We'll be in the
us?
future. See, if Superman runs fast enough around the Earth, he can actually change the rotation.
There are different theories as to what happened in that scene. I think we could all agree if he actually reversed the rotation of the Earth, that would have destroyed everything on it.
It would have destroyed the Earth.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It was just a visual representation of him going backwards in time.
In time.
Yeah. That's my headcanon. So.
Okay, so your headcanon, I like that. So, but are you excited about this movie?
I'm interested to see. I'm intrigued. I'm interested. Will it get me into the theater? I don't know about that.
Oh,
Would you wait till the home
Can't
release,
even
or-
get you to buy a ticket for it, huh?
You know, I mean, we'll see.
Superman is classic, and people know him, and people know the theme. Like generations of people know the theme and the theme song. So just hearing the music gets me kind of excited. And then his like truth and justice thing, like just the core values that he's supposed to stand for, get me excited. And there was like a line in the trailer that was something about, I'm gonna butcher it. I'll have to wait till the movie comes out. But it was something about, you know, I care about the truth, but I'm also kind of partial to justice. And it was a nod to his whole truth and justice thing. And I was like, yes, you know.
Yeah, they took the American way out of that phrase, though, for some
They
reason.
took the American way out. That's us, you know. I'm like, yeah, it's a good representative of the CLC, I think. Farrell Foster always loved Superman and the truth and justice thing.
That maybe I'm not filling his shoes in very well in that regard. Then. I'm more of a Ninja Turtles guy, and they're just about being radical party dudes. So
Fair enough.
if I were the director of Radical Party...
I'm the do justice part. I'm supposed to be the do justice part of Micah 6:8, so I gotta care about
Yeah,
those things.
fair. Ladies want to weigh in on the Superman or what movie you're interested in this summer? What about the live-action shot-for-shot remake of How to Train Your Dragon?
I don't even think I saw past the first one.
I'm just sad that Irene and I are no longer on speaking terms. Okay, continue, Katie.
I am excited about How to Train Your Dragon. You guys, I don't know if you know or not know, Hiccup, and well, that whole story includes, a character with a prosthetic, and so it's always really exciting. So I'm curious to see just how that looks, and just want it to feel authentic and real, because it means a lot to the amputee community when you've got something like that. And so, I'm more curious how they're going to demonstrate that and show that progress. And I will probably at some point see Superman in the theater. I'll see it more out of a curiosity than like a supportive, like anything like that right now.
John, could you tell Irene that the next two How to Train Your Dragon movies are also really good?
I haven't seen them. Irene,
no.
the next two How to Train Your Dragon
It's
movies
just
are
you and me
apparently
now.
also really
Speaking
good.
of terms.
They're in cahoots against us.
Cahoots?
They probably don't even know what a hiccup is.
No.
One of the healthiest
one of the
relationships
dragons?
The last
in Hollywood
movie I
is Hiccup
watched-
and Astrid.
The last movie I watched was The Accountant 2.
Oh,
Wow.
was that any good?
I really enjoyed it. I like the John Wick movies,
Yep.
a lot of the action ones. That's my
Okay,
jam.
you're cool again to me, Irene. I forgive you.
I would have to go back and watch the first Accountant for a reminder on, like, I know
I
in this
feel like
one,
I needed to
it's
watch
him and his
it.
brother, but
Were you
I don't
disappointed when it
remember
wasn't
the main
about
character.
spreadsheets, Irene? When you saw the first one?